social media. Oh, thank you, little angel. Because everyone is terrified of dating a narcissist, being with a narcissist, and they should be, because it is terrible to be with a narcissist. It is a one-way street to Gehenna, because there is really not a lot of hope if someone is a true narcissist. However, I will say that a lot of people, because of this fear, because it is so bad, jump at the first sign of any, hang on a sec, of any sign of narcissism, or whatever they think narcissism is. And then they opt out and run away from a guy because they think they're narcissistic. And we use the word narcissistic so often that I think we've lost touch with what we're really talking about. So I wanted to come on tonight. I wanted to give you some tools, some wisdom, some insight that I've learned, that I've studied, and also maybe equip you with in dating with feeling more confident about it and not being so scared of it. Yeah, so does that sound good? And if for those of you that want to stay on till the very end, we'll have a special bonus for you, a special offer, and we can talk about more of that then for anyone who stays on. We've got something really, really cool for you. All right. So let me just share my screen. Here we go. There we go. How to spot a narcissist. So this is for people who are scared to date a narcissist, are worried they won't be able to tell if he's a narcissist, and want to know how to protect themselves from attracting one. And that's really the big key, is how to protect yourself, right? Because protect yourself and be able to tell if he's really a narcissist. That's really the problem. And what is a narcissist? And I want to talk about this because narcissistic traits are very different to what is classically called, when we say he's a narcissist, what generally people mean is this very scary thing called narcissistic personality disorder, which is actually a disorder. I'm not going to go into all the complexities around it, but I want to make a distinction about the difference between narcissistic traits versus narcissistic personality disorder. Narcissistic personality disorder is where the primary orientation of this person, the primary way they're interacting in all their interactions, is through narcissism. A narcissistic trait, we all have narcissistic traits at different times, right? We all have a sense of a lack of accountability, a focus on yourself, or being selfish, or we lack empathy sometimes, but it's sometimes. It's moments of that. It's experiences of that. A true narcissist, there is no other mode of operating. That is the mode that they operate in all the time. So I want to first, number one, I want to make a distinction here, because narcissistic traits are doable. They can grow, they can learn, they can heal. We can heal if we have those, right? It's okay. Narcissistic personality disorder is a whole different category. And that is really like a type of mental health disorder that's listed in the statistical manual, diagnostic and statistical manual, of which is the shrinky book that all the shrinks use, right? Psychologists, psychiatrists. And that is characterized by a pervasive pattern that's constant, right? Of grandiosity, meaning blowing themselves up, a need for admiration, lack of empathy. These are the key things, right? Lack of empathy and desperate need for admiration, like being fed desperately, right? And this obviously comes from voids and holes in the childhood, which we'll go into in a minute. And this grandiosity, they really feel that they're bigger than they are. They're bigger, they're more powerful, they're more impactful. They need to be around high status people, right? That they're the people, they talk down to people who are less than them in their eyes. This is what we're talking about. And people with narcissistic traits don't necessarily meet the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. So that's what happened is that we have become more narcissistic as a society. just through all the social media and the selfies and all of this stuff, right? We've become more self-focused. So in narcissism, there was even a debate. I don't know where it got up to because I'm not following all the psych stuff anymore, but there was a debate where they should take it out of the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, this narcissistic personality disorder, because so many people were identifying with it. It's really scary, right? Which I don't think that means they have narcissistic personality disorder, but it's just this focus on self has become so broad, so prevalent. So I think that that's really important. And narcissists are arrogant, right? We would call it in Judaism, from a Jewish perspective, a Baal Gaiva, right? A Baal Gaiva. Baal Gaiva. So you can have Gaiva, which is arrogance. We all have that sometimes, some more than others. And then a Baal Gaiva. Baal means like the host of Gaiva. What does that mean? It means that like the Gaiva is like the core part of my personality. That's how I centrally operate. A Baal Gaiva is different from someone who has Gaiva. And that's what I want to make a distinction here, you know? So, okay. So let's go, keep going. But the main focus on the main qualities I want you to pick up here is entitlement, manipulation. They're very manipulative. And when you're around a narcissist, they will manipulate others by influencing you with emotions, right? It's particularly fear and particularly anger. So you'll lose it and then wonder like, what's going on? Like, why did I lose? Like, why did I lose it? You know, like, or you'll question yourself. You'll start to doubt yourself. So a lot of the times you can tell a narcissist based on how you feel around them. How do you feel around them? If you feel frustrated, angry, and it starts to grow, obviously at the beginning, it's not like that, right? But as you get to know a narcissist and be around the narcissist, you'll start to feel more scared, anxious, doubting, or angry. It provokes, right? Through their manipulation, their control. They often pit people against each other, right? So for personal gain, if they can gain something out of it, they'll pit people against each other and to get what they want. So it's a divide and conquer game. And they're really preoccupied with these fantasies of unlimited self-importance, right? They just think of them, they need to think of themselves that way to function, I guess. Okay. They'll also do what's called gaslighting. Well, I'm going to get into it. Let's keep going. What kind of childhood? We're going to get more in depth into it. But what kind of childhood creates a narcissist? If some of you are interested in the psychology a little bit behind it. So in order to understand this, we have to go back to, let's talk for a minute about normal, healthy childhood, right? And what happens. And normal, healthy childhood, it's natural for a kid to be narcissistic. Children are narcissistic. I don't know. They're just totally selfish. All they want is themselves, and all they think about is themselves, and all they want is what they want. And that's normal, healthy kid. But as the kid gets mirrored back their reality, right? As they get mirrored back their own reality, which is a healthy mother particularly, and father, but mother mainly, a healthy mother will reflect back to the kid his reality. He or she gets solidified, that the boundary of the kid gets affirmed, right? The sense of self gets affirmed, gets built up. And when the sense of self is built up, then as they get older, they have the capacity to expand that sense of self to now include other people, because they are affirmed in who they are and they have the ability to go beyond that. What happens with a narcissist, a kid who's a narcissist, who becomes a narcissist, is they don't get that natural, healthy reflection back. They don't get it back. And actually, then they look for that reflection and suck off that reflection in others all the time. They need others to feed them because they didn't get that natural reflection. It's interesting because the word narcissist comes from a Greek mythological character called Narcissus, which was it was a punishment of this character called Narcissist when he did not want to pursue a relationship with a different Greek mythological character. So as punishment, he was cursed to constantly stare at his own reflection in the pond or whatever, and to be obsessed with his own reflection. That was this narcissist character. So the narcissist as a term came out of that because they're desperately always looking for their own reflection. as a mirror. And that comes from the lack of that as a child, the lack of a healthy mirroring back. So they never felt affirmed, and they could never go beyond their own sense of themselves. They were just stuck in that, needing that mirror back. So it's like being paused in a trauma, you know, in a freeze response nearly. That's my words. That's how I'm interpreting it, where they're stuck there. They're just stuck and they need that mirroring constantly. So that can come from all sorts of types of, you know, obviously unhealthy parental relationships, like overindulgence. Sometimes the other way, if they get everything they want, so you spoil your kid rotten, they get an overindulgence. They also don't get a healthy mirroring back of who they really are. They're getting spoiled rotten, right? So they get a bigger sense of entitlement. There's no sense of outside themselves, because all mom and dad are reflecting back is how amazing I am, rather than reflecting a healthy, put a child in its place in the right way so that they know who they are, right? That's very important for children to know that they're important and they're special and they're lovable and they're children, and they should have respect and honor, and people above them, and a bigger, like we need all the parts of life put into place for us by our parents. So the spoiling and overindulgence, you wouldn't think necessarily creates this, but it can, with a sense of entitlement, right? A sense of like, I need excessive admiration because I'm used to that. Maybe I was spoiled as a kid, but spoiled in an extreme way. Overindulgence, neglect. We know that makes sense. Neglect. They didn't get what they needed. And trauma, same thing. Unpredictable. Trauma is unpredictable as well. Unpredictable inconsistencies, unrealistic expectations, when the kid again is not reflected back about who he or she really is, but there was the bar was too high and they could never meet that expectation. It was unrealistic. So they never got an affirmed sense of self, of who they really are. And so they can always be craving that. So inconsistent parenting and modeling, obviously. So modeling, meaning if you had a narcissistic parent, a kid will learn off that as well, as that's the way to do it, to live. Okay. So what I wanted to mention though is, and what hopefully will put your mind at ease, is that only 6% of the population have narcissistic personality disorder. 6%. Mostly men, interestingly. Mostly men have, and only 6%. So the chances statistically that you're dating a full-blown narcissistic personality disorder narcissist is slim. So we can all take a deep breath and relax, right? Like that, it's not likely. Don't jump to that. And because that's one of the other things I see is, out of the fear, then we can really ruin the dating and even the accurate perception of someone because of that fear, right? We all know, if you've followed me for a while and you know my work, that fear is often the biggest block for numerous reasons, right? It'll either hold us back or it makes us suspicious, which means I'm not really in the dating. I'm not really open. I'm not available because I'm so scared that I'm like, block it. You know, I'm very suspicious and cautious and guarding myself. So we don't want to do that. I want you to feel confident, so that you really know that you can pick the right kind of person for you, and that you can feel like totally fine to show up and be yourself when you're dating. Yeah. So as far as like diagnosing a narcissist, they don't really diagnose it in a childhood, because children are naturally selfish. So they can't tell yet whether that's healthy or not. And so they usually do it once, if this kind of behavior keeps going into adolescence, really after puberty, well into the teens, later teens. Particularly one of the big indicators, if you know kids and you want to watch kids, is lack of empathy. Lack of empathy is a very big one that we can get very worried about. Lack of empathy is, I can't possibly perceive your reality outside of mine. I can't understand you. So here's a hot tip, although it comes later, but I'm letting you know now. If you want to test to see how narcissistic a guy is, you can actually do a litmus test checking for empathy. Tell them a sad story. Tell them something hard that happened to you. Tell them something terrible that you were like affected by, right? Or something even positive, something wonderful that happened that you were like in tears about because it was so amazing. And see their response. Watch for their response. If they kind of dismiss it and just move on, ooh, that's maybe a yellow flag, right? Not a red flag, a yellow flag. Gather data on the dates, right? Dates not about the first sign of something you freak out and run. It's about gathering data. So do it a number of times over a number of dates. Watch for their empathy meter or their empathy radar, right? So that's one of them. Repetitively blaming others for bad outcomes is a classic sign of narcissism, really blaming others. Persistent bullying, if they're kids, bullying others, wanting to win no matter what, no matter how much they hurt other people. So wanting to win, bullying, not developing empathy, being a lot more competitive than cooperative. These are the types of things that are hints and signs of narcissism. And okay, so let's keep going because we're on the roll here. Signs you're dating a narcissist. You're actually dating now. How do I know he's really a narcissist? Like really like problematic narcissist. So the first would be gaslighting and manipulation. I mean, this is not in order. The first probably would be love bombing. When you first meet someone and they start to give you an exorbitant amount of compliments and gifts or experiences, the dates are over the top, the text messaging of the level of affection that they're displaying does absolutely not match your level of experience with them or the time you've spent together. Okay. That's called love bombing. It has to be consistent and persistent. It's not a one-off gift or a one-off compliment. You're like, oh my gosh, she's love bombing. Like, no. Right. Some people do that if they're uncomfortable. Let's say you don't like the guy as much and the guy gives you a compliment. Sometimes that can feel a bit scary because like, I'm not there yet. So then you could jump to that conclusion incorrectly. It's love bombing. No, it could just be that he was more affectionate than you. But consistent compliments when it's not being reflected back by you, and gifts and experiences that are over the top, like some sort of jewelry in the first few dates, taking you out to exorbitant dinners that are really expensive, and then taking you to a show, and then taking you home in a limousine, and like whatever. I'm just saying like these very exorbitant things, basically knocking you off your feet, sweeping you off your feet to the point where a lot of people classically say this feels too good to be true. Guess what? It is. It's too good to be true. In fact, love bombing is a type of control. It's a type of manipulation and control. They want to woo you so hard that you're going to just melt in their hands, and they want to control you eventually. Gaslighting and manipulation. Gaslighting and manipulation is very classic of narcissists. Gaslighting is where they literally will turn the situation around. So whatever your experience is of the situation, you end up doubting it. And they completely dismiss and make you feel like you're crazy, right? That what your experience didn't really happen, and they turn it on you, that kind of thing. So that's what's called gaslighting, right? Where your reality is not only not validated, it's completely undone. Like are you crazy? What's wrong with you? That didn't happen. Like, wait, what? Yes, it did. You did this, this, and this. No, I didn't. I meant this, this, and this. You saw it that way. It's all on you. And you start going, wait. Oh, and then in the moment you're like, oh, I'm sorry. I really didn't see it that way. Yeah. And so it's all your fault. And then when you walk away, you say, wait, no, that wasn't right. So you often have the sense later when you walk away, but then you doubt yourself. And then when you're back with them, they make you question. Over time, if you can imagine that pattern, it's crazy making. It's literally crazy making. You really start to doubt your reality constantly. And this can happen a lot as well if you have narcissistic parents. If you have very strong parents who kind of turn around your reality, their reality is right, my way or the highway, and your reality is not. As a child, that's very hard you can't argue against your parent. So you just learn to doubt yourself all the time. And you definitely don't get a sense of self from that. Charm, excessive charm. They're usually charming. Right? People think when they're dating a narcissist, because people talk about the toxicity of narcissists, they think it's going to be scary and it's going to be horrible and abusive. It doesn't feel that way. It feels the opposite. It feels like literally they're your Prince Charming. They're your Prince Charming. They've waltzed into your life. They're showering you with adoration and compliments and all the stuff you've been craving. So it is excessive, but when you're in it, it feels so good. It's intoxicating. Okay. That's what a true narcissist does. Idealization and devaluation. This means they idealize you at first, and then very quickly it shifts to devaluing you, dismissing you, demeaning, putting you down, degrading, like they, you were so good at first, and it flips. And you're like, what do you mean? You were so nice to me in the beginning. Like, how did this happen? So you keep questioning and trying to prove your love and that you're worthy, and right. And it doesn't, they keep giving you less and less and less. And that's part of the control. They do not compromise. They only want to do what they want to do. They're volatile. So there's an explosion of, hostility if they don't get their way. If they don't get their way, they can't compromise and they get volatile. So all this stuff comes out later. They will not show you this in the early dating stages, right? They have a sense of entitlement, as we spoke, and a lack of empathy. So they need to be the center of attention. And they will regularly talk on a date. I'm just thinking, how does it come out on a date? They will regularly talk about their fantasies of power, success, or beauty, right? They often are very worried about who's looking at them, and you might notice they're looking around the room, like who's here. They can't really be with you. They're very very focused on their appearance or who's looking at them. And again, that's their radar. So you notice that on a date. You will notice that on a date. And they never get too deep. They never get too deep. It's all very shallow. Sort of chit chat. It's very pleasant. It could be interesting, but never too deep. Why? Because they can't really feel. They definitely will never be vulnerable. So they will never be vulnerable. So there's very little deep bond that can happen because of that. They won't go into vulnerability. I don't know if they can even access it, to be honest. They're very envious of others, or think that others are envious of them. Right? And they may gossip about people they're secretly envious of. They put them down. They degrade other people. So watch for how your date talks about other people. There's a very big clue, right? Or they make up their own reasons for why that person is successful, attractive, well-liked. They'll give you a reason like, oh, it's because of this, this, and this. It's not really because of them. So on some level, like, oh, she only looks good because of all that plastic surgery. Like that kind of. So we want to be able to notice how they act. I once I'll tell you on the next slide. Hang on. Look at this. Oh wait. Hang on. No. Okay. I think I got rid of a slide by accident. Okay. They also talk about themselves and their accomplishments, and they show little interest in your life. Right? They show little interest in your life. They tend to exaggerate all their achievements and talents. They blow, like you might find yourself going, wow, that's amazing. I can't believe you do that. I can't believe this guy's incredible. Like, cause he's blown himself up in your eyes. Right. And they have a history of unstable or tumultuous relationships. So if you start asking just naturally, as you do on a date, about someone's friends or family, whatever, oh, I don't speak to my sister. Oh yeah, and then later on, an hour later, they're saying, oh yeah, I had a best friend, in high school. And I don't speak to him either. He was a loser. But yeah, in college, I had some friends and they kicked me out of their group. And if you start noticing that there's these breakdown of relationships, just in passing as they're talking, and you just act curious and interested, is not that it's bad, but you start to notice that there's a history of really unstable relationships. They can't maintain relationships long-term. So one of the first signs you want to see with someone, even if they look a bit arrogant, is if they have long-term friends, like really good long-term relationships. That's a good sign, right? So the opposite of everything I'm saying is a good sign. And, the other extreme is the bad sign. So if someone has stable relationships, they've been in a job for a long time, there's stability in their life, right? That's what we're looking for. Okay. The effect of love bombing, by the way, is that you may start, well, how does it control you to be love bombed? You think, what do you mean? It feels great. Why is it going to control me to be love bombed? So it controls you because you may start doing things you normally wouldn't do. For example, you might say, well, I wouldn't normally do that, but my date spends so much money on me, so it's the least I can do, I guess. I feel guilty because he spends so much on me. Right? So you start crossing your own boundaries. You start giving away your sense of self. You start abandoning yourself because the other person does so much for you. How could you not? This is a massive warning sign. Okay. So you just have to pay attention to their conversations. You have to pay attention to their conversations. I'm just going to see, why do I not have this here? No, I don't. I got rid of it. Oh, well. Pay attention to their conversations. Do their conversations tend to revolve around only their interests? They kind of move on from yours very quickly. Do their eyes glaze over when you start talking? That's a good one. Have you seen that in people? You start talking and they're like, kind of, you can feel they just could care less. That's a sign. That's a sign. Now, be careful. If you're dating a good guy and he's tired and his eyes glaze over, I don't want you to jump like, oh, Jackie said he was a narcissist, right? Like, I don't want you to go into this extreme. I want you just to, it has to be a compilation of all these qualities, right? And how do they treat others? So they're often very indifferent to other people, or even rude, right, to other people. They don't really care. There's a lack of sensitivity of anyone they think is below them. So that could be the waiter, could be someone in traffic. It could be, you know, someone who's inconveniencing them. You want to see how they respond to that kind of person. They never get vulnerable, we talked about before, right? So, and do they avoid personal questions? They're very good at deflecting. So you ask them a question. Yeah, it was pretty good. So, and like, oh, I want to tell you about my work. Like, they just deflect and go somewhere else. They don't want to answer deep questions, or they don't go there. They can't go there, really. Have you caught them in a lie? Narcissists will tend to lie. Little white lies all the time. They'll lie. So we want to catch out when there's an inconsistency. And what typically women do is they question themselves. Well, they judge favorably. He didn't mean it. He's so nice. He was so nice in other ways. Like, you know, it's okay. Like, literally the women will abandon their reality and make it okay for the guy, for the liar. But look out for little lies. Like, for example, let's say they don't have any contact with their ex. No, I moved on. Let's say he was divorced. I don't have any contact with the ex. In the middle of the call, in the middle of the date, the ex calls. Let's say, right? Like I'm saying, you want to notice inconsistencies like that. And do you like them less as the night goes on? Sometimes as you get to know them more and more, you like them less and less. So they start off strong. Oh my gosh, amazing Prince Charming. And then you like them less and less as you get to know them. And because they make a very, very good first impression. And then that declines over time. Okay. So what type of women do narcissists typically attract? Because this is what comes in. What we don't realize is that in every relationship, you are 50% of that relationship. In every dynamic, you are 50%, which means there has to be kind of like a lock and key effect in a dynamic for it to resonate and for it to be attracted. So we can't control a narcissist, but we can control what we let into our lives and what we resonate with on some level. And so what's actually surprising here is that narcissists, you would think, would only attract people who have low self-esteem, which they do, but it's not the only thing. They actually attract people who are very successful and impressive as well, because they want people to boost their credit, their image. So if they're walking down the road with someone who's also super impressive, they feel better. So they will often try and attract someone who is looking successful and impressive as well, or anyone who will reflect well on them in the eyes of others. So sometimes it's very image-based. Someone also who validates their feelings, overlooks their flaws, and who is not likely to leave them, especially when they go into their narcissistic abuse. So that's where someone with low self-esteem who validates another person, who has a very empathetic nature, sweet, kind, selfless kind of woman, is perfect for narcissists, because he can just feed off that. It's like a parasitic kind of relationship. And the woman will naturally, for the sake of this love that she felt at the beginning, which was not real, it was control and it was love bombing, will just keep giving of herself, right? And try to boost him up. And she will literally turn over backwards and make herself a pretzel to make him feel good and look good, and blame herself if something doesn't work out. Well, he's right. I did do this, you know, and there's no accountability or responsibility taken by him. That's a very big sign, a very big giveaway. Right? When there's a healthy relationship, both people can apologize and say sorry and take accountability for whatever their part in something is. A narcissist will not, and the woman will often take all the blame and take it. And she'll take it willingly. She'll have low self-esteem or low self-worth. And so rather than leave them, oh yeah, it was my fault. Right? Now, this can come from when a woman has also been in a difficult situation growing up, or had a circumstance with her parents where she didn't have a strong sense of self-affirmed either, but rather than going into narcissism, she went into more of a broken, low self-worth state, right? And so she looks at this strong guy with this charisma and says, wow, this is amazing. So we want to be able to make sure, again, with curiosity and not judgment. So there's no judgment here. We want to be curious. What kind of guys do I attract? What kind of guys do I let in? At what point do I walk out? Where is my line? Where's my boundary where I'm not willing to take anymore? Where is it they've crossed the line? How many times do they dismiss me? Do they ignore me? Do they put me down in some backhanded way? How many times? Right? So if someone does something once and it's hurtful, I would recommend you bringing it up to them. If they don't respond well when you bring it up to them, and they not only respond well, but actually change their behavior, that is already a red flag, because whatever they're doing at the beginning of the relationship is the best you're going to get. At the beginning of the relationship is when they're trying to impress you the most. So, and this goes for all dating, by the way. If you start seeing flaws in someone when you're dating, magnify that by 100 when you're later on down the track, when they don't care about wooing you anymore. So this is really important. Everything's kind of magnified when you're dating, right? For the good and for the bad. So basically they're looking for you to make them feel good. If they feel good, they'll continue. And you want to keep making them feel good because you really want the relationship to continue, because they made you feel so good at the beginning, but now it's less often. But this is what we really want to look out for. If you know that you have some low self-esteem or low self-worth, you really might need to work on your boundaries. You really might need to build up your self-esteem and self-worth so you will never let a narcissist in, right? Someone with really good self-worth, even if they let a narcissist in, they won't tolerate the behavior for long. Can only work if you're willing to be treated badly, and we're going to get to other reasons why in a minute. Okay, so how do you protect yourself? How do you protect yourself? Number one, you must set boundaries. You must set boundaries. You must, I know that's hard for a lot of women. It's very hard to set boundaries, but you must. You must, because you owe it to yourself, right? There's certain things that don't get crossed. You must, I had a client recently-ish, who had a guy, she really liked this guy. He was living in some fancy house on the beaches, and he only wanted her to go to him. Self-centered, busy. She fits in with his life. It was great. And he never once took her out in like 7 months or 6 months for dinner, like to drive. It was a significant drive to the kosher restaurants from where his house was. And he never took her out once. And all she wanted to do, like he said, come to my house and we'll cook. Beautiful house. And he would cook, but he enjoyed cooking and it was his house. And she drove 40 minutes to his house every day and then 40 minutes back. And he never really offered to take her out. And she told me this, and I'm like, are you kidding? Run. What are you doing? Right. And so, but then if she did that, she said, he won't want to see me. Yes, he won't want to see you. You're worth more than this. You need to have someone treat you like you're a princess and that you're, they're there for you. So set boundaries, right? Take the focus off them. See what happens when you take the focus off them. This is a test that you can do when you're dating someone. Meaning put the focus on you, or put the focus on something else, or a situation or a dilemma or something that is not them. Put the focus somewhere else and see if they just move it back to themselves. That's one of the ways as in consistently, not one off, but just consistently, right? The other thing I said, number 3, was an empathy litmus test, right? So check out if they're empathic about a situation that's genuinely either really inspiring and exciting, or genuinely heartbreaking or difficult. Right now you could be talking about anything with the war going on. See how they react. Is there any sense of heart there? Don't give up what is important to you. So this is, again, someone who has low self-worth and low self-esteem, and they meet this very exciting guy and he's love bombing and he's so exciting. Guess what happens? All of her hobbies, interests, commitments, activities can go out the window, and she ends up merging with him, so to speak. But really what she's doing is losing her sense of self completely. So if you keep sacrificing what you love and what you normally do when you were single, because this guy's in your life, that leads to codependency, that leads to merging, that leads to losing sense of self, that leads to disaster. There's no other way out. It will not ever be good. So do not do it. Listen to family, friends. Your families and friends can sniff out this stuff. They know when someone's toxic for you. And usually if you're in the middle of the love bombing, you don't care. It feels way too good. It's like a drug. It's like a drug. It's filling up every hole and void in you that you possibly have, right? But it's fake. So listen to them, listen to the family, friends, and have a support network. Take it slow, because narcissists will reveal themselves eventually. They will. So and that they will push for a quick process of either commitment or moving it to the next level. Like they want it to go fast because they're manipulating you. So take it slow. Take it slow. There's no need to rush. And be cautious of early flattery. So that's the love bombing, right? Be cautious of that. Okay. The biggest challenge of all of this is for women to trust themselves. Because there's a crazy statistic that said that something they did a study on assault, sexual assault, and 90-something%, I can't remember the exactly, but it was in the 90s, of women had a feeling something was off, something was wrong right before they got assaulted, and they ignored it. They ignored their own intuition. So trust yourself. If you have enough time with someone, listen to your body. Do you feel scared? Do you feel anxious about this around this person? Are you getting more self-doubt the longer you're with this person? Are you questioning your perception of reality more, right? Like, how do you feel around this person? And everything I can teach you tonight is really, really great as far as like clarity, right? There's 5 things you need to be able to get married easily, I always say. Right? Clarity, what you're looking for, confidence, navigating any kind of dating system, sense of inner peace that you can show up and be truly available and present and open and secure when you're dating. Self-worth, you have to feel worthy of a great man who's healthy. And self-trust, trusting yourself to make the biggest decision of your life. And usually I work with women who don't have all 5 strongly. They want to particularly work on 1 or 2. Often self-worth and self-trust are the big 2, I would say, even more than the others. And this self-trust really can be standing in your way. It's a block. If you don't know how to trust yourself because you're not in alignment with yourself, then dating is really scary. And particularly dating a narcissist, because they'll get in there and they'll manipulate you. And then you won't trust yourself. So you're kind of weakened. And this webinar is really good for teaching you some information about it and insight and wisdom. But what it doesn't do is teach you how to trust yourself, which is a different process. And that's what I go into and teach women to do in my course, right? Because you have to be connected to yourself to be able to trust yourself. You have to listen to your sensations in your body and your feelings. You have to be friends with yourself, from your higher self and your lower self together, because the body doesn't lie. So trusting yourself is really key. And if you do trust yourself, then you can actually go out dating and be really confident, because there's nothing to be worried about. Because if something's off, you know that you'll sense it at some point. Maybe not straight away, but like, you don't have to get it straight away. Dating is to find out more information. So the biggest thing to work on is trusting yourself, right? Trusting yourself. And a lot of the times these feelings that we have around self-worth and self-doubt and all this stuff about I'm not good enough, and I have low self-esteem, or I need validation, I'm a people pleaser. These things come out of the subconscious in us here. For those of you who've been around, you've seen this table, right? The subconscious is the part of the brain we're not aware of. And that, the insecure part of us that likes to people please and needs love, like that's the part that a narcissist will hook into, those wounds in us. They hook in and they make those wounds feel so good, right? Feels so good. The subconscious, which is underneath the surface here, it's the part of the brain we're not aware of, that drives over 80% of our knee-jerk reactions and responses. Over 80%, it's a lot. And we're not aware of it. So what we're aware of is this tiny little tip at the top of the conscious mind, right? Of what we're aware of and what we want people to know about us. And it's only 20%. So we have to learn how to tune into the subconscious, which sits at the feeling level in the body, right? And it's not influenced by your conscious mind or analysis or logic. So that's why, by the way, you have these kind of arguments in yourself where you have a certain feeling and then your mind kicks in and says, well, what are you talking about? Don't be silly. You're totally fine. You're jumping to conclusions. And our mind argues consciously, and the feelings are telling you something completely different. It's a different language. And what I love to teach women is how to communicate with yourself, because that starts to build security, self-trust, right? Self-worth. It all goes together. It's like becomes your core. And that's really the practice. That is really the practice that I think all women need and need to work on, right? And the subconscious, we tap into the subconscious when we daydream, when we dream at night, when we have a knee-jerk reaction, it's usually coming from the subconscious. And you can get in consciously into the subconscious through meditation, visualization, hypnosis, those kinds of things, which we do a lot of in my course. Okay. This is what I teach you in my 9-week course, how to identify and heal subconscious wounds, and that may attract a narcissist. How do we know where are they living in me? How do they manifest? How do they feel? How do I strengthen my sense of self? And how do I define myself internally so I don't need this love bombing so much? And how do I trust myself really? How do I really trust myself, right? You walk away with a profound increase in those 5 things I talked about. There's group calls, there's one-to-one sessions, your own personal coach, there's online modules. There's a whole way I want to teach you. My goal is to teach you how to do this for yourself and to be able to continue working that way with it. Not that it's a quick fix or a magic bullet, but people profoundly change very quickly in 9 weeks, because when you access your subconscious, you can change these deeper things. People feel different, right? So here's a testimonial from Sippy. How can I properly thank you? You led me on this incredible journey of self-discovery, gave me the tools that I needed to connect with my inner world and help me build self-trust that I needed to begin living my life authentically. Dating before and after your course was completely different. I was more grounded, confident, trusting, and vulnerable. Thank you for your guidance and for introducing me to my husband. I happened to introduce her to her husband, which was crazy. I'm forever grateful, right? This was at the wedding. What was important here, she really got this felt sense of this shift inside of her before I thought of the husband, before Shem put him in my head. She really, really changed radically about just owning herself, really, really owning herself. And it was a really amazing thing to see. And there's another one from, this was Natalie. This course taught me to change all my negative beliefs I previously had about men and allow myself to receive the man of my dreams with open arms, right? So this sort of work may be for you if you want to never attract a narcissist, you want to date with clarity, feel worthy of an amazing guy deep down, to really trust yourself more. If you want to listen to your own voice and really be in tune with yourself, take the pressure off, feel confident dating, make sure you're truly open and available, and that you can really date with authenticity and vulnerability, then this kind of work is for you. And if you want to sign up for a free consult call. I think Christine's going to put it in the chat, a call. You can just also open your phone on a camera and scan this QR code in your camera, and a link will come up as well. And I will give you 10% off. Surprise. I will give you 10% off if you book in a call in the next week, right? I mean, you don't have to book it for the next week, but to actually be booked in the next week to have a call at some point, I will give you 10% off if you came off this webinar. So, so please let me just, I know there's some things in the chat, and okay, let me go through the questions. I'm open up for Q&A, and I hope that was helpful. I hope that was useful, and I will happy to answer some questions. Can you explain what the reflection back to a child would look like? Yes. How does one reflect back to the reality of a child? Perfect question. So let's say I was in a playground the other day with a friend, and this just happened. So I just saw it. Actually, it was beautiful. She was so good at this. A little girl was in the playground, and another sort of bit of a bully boy came along and like pushed the kid. The kid was about 1.5, 2. Pushed the kid literally over on purpose, shoved the kid. Kid falls down and cries and runs to the mom. There's not a big talker yet, this kid. A little bit of words, but not a lot. But the kid's looking to the mom, and she's crying. And the mom says, "Oh, that was so hard. He was being mean. He pushed you on the ground, and that really hurt your feelings." And the mother could see in the child's face all this pain based on the situation. And the mother just reflected exactly back what the situation, emotional mirroring was for that child, and validated it. That must have really hurt your feelings. Yeah, let's go and ask him first to say sorry. And so she walks this little cute kid who's like 1.5 years over, and she goes up to the boy and says, "You know, you really hurt her. You know, I think you need to say sorry to her." So the boy says, "Sorry." Say, "Oh, look, he said sorry. He didn't mean it." He said, you know, like she literally walked her through the whole resolution through mirroring it back. But if the mother is not in tune with what's going on emotionally, so then that kid doesn't get that at all. and they're left to make sense of the world in an emotional, overwhelming, energetic way, right? Kids live on that emotional energy realm. And if it's too much, guess what a kid does? Whoop, I'm going to shut it down. I don't want to feel. I don't want to know. I'm going to live in my head. A lot of people who live in their head intellectualizing will do that because they didn't know how to make sense of their feelings. So that kind of, mothers are doing that to their children all day long. Someone's saying, Amazal, how about someone who only talks about themselves, doesn't ask you about family life day? Exactly. I would say that's definitely a red flag, especially if you try to insert it. I would test it, try to insert some ideas and some thoughts and see what happens. Sometimes they will also do the opposite and pretend they know and are best friends. Exactly, as a form of control with everyone. Exactly. Right. They know they're best friends, but that's also part of their importance, right? They know everyone. What do you mean when you say take it as slowly as you can to figure out if he's a narcissist? Oh, meaning when you're dating a real narcissist, it feels unbelievable, like you get swept off your feet. So when I said take it slow, I mean, there's no pressure to make a decision about this person quickly. So you don't have to do it in a quicker time frame than you normally would, right? And there will be a sense of that sometimes. So I just mean that over time, it will unravel. He will reveal himself. And so if the other part of it is if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And I don't mean to be a negative Nelly, but you must go into getting engaged or more seriously committing to someone, obviously, with the ideas of knowing what their flaws are and where your areas of difficulty will be. It's a good thing. It worries me when any of the women I work with don't see the negatives of a guy. But you can't only see the negatives, obviously. You have to see it should be 80% positive, but you see the 20% that you have to bridge the gap. I like the 80-20 rule. Yes, some narcissists can fake empathy, but over time you can tell. It depends if you're connected. If you're connected, you for sure can tell someone's faking empathy. Oh, that's so hard. Oh, yeah. Like, it's not real. It doesn't, at some point, it doesn't feel good. Oh, what was that like for you? Like, it just, they can know. I hear you. They can fake empathy and it can feel like manipulation. Exactly. Jennifer's saying it feels like manipulation. At some point you feel it's not real. It doesn't feel real. Exactly. Hi, Gaval. Gaval, yep, she raised her hand. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question. So if, like, for me, I feel like I have a lot of abandonment issues from childhood, and also my dad is a narcissist and constantly seeking, like, if I have a boyfriend or partner, I'm constantly seeking their validation, or I'm constantly putting them on this pedestal and like getting obsessed over them. And then when they become abusive, which obviously any person that you do that to them, you put them in that, pedestal, they're going to become abusive.
Correct.
And I'm kind of like creating my dad in the partner. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of
right. That's what we do. We recreate our childhood wounds so that we can work it through. But you don't want to have to do that. It's better to heal your childhood wounds outside of marriage so you don't have to recreate it in marriage.
So, but like, how would that look like to resolve that? And then like, what would be the step? Like, how would you do that? And then also, if you're in a relationship where your partner like tells you, hey, we're not a good match or whatever, is this something that you have to be, or can you make that happen? In other words, can me and my partner not be a good match right now, let's say, and then I work on myself, and then we could be a good match, like to get married? Or is it like, if you're not a good match, you gotta part your ways and get out?
In general, or with a narcissist?
My partner's not a narcissist, but he could get mean because I have codependency and I've become very obsessed with him. So now I'm on a break and I'm trying to learn how to, focus on myself. But my question is, if he's telling me we're not a good match, do you think that if I were to work on myself, on, obviously abandonment issue, validation, not having self-worth, those things, if I were to work on those and like work on myself, do you think it's possible that him and I can potentially be a good match? Like, can you create that, or is it like if you meet the person, you're not a good match?
I hear the question. Yeah. So it is possible to take a break from someone, go work on yourself, and come back together and have it happen. I've seen that before. However, in this situation, firstly, he's telling you you're not a good match. So he's 50% of this dynamic. It's not that you're codependent. Codependency is two people. It takes two people to be dependent, right?
What's the one that it's like you're dependent on the person, they're not dependent on you?
No, but subconsciously they need you to be dependent on them. Otherwise they wouldn't be in this. They're 50%. They're attracting you who's dependent on them. So on some level, they also like that. They like to be in control. They like to be the enabler. There's a lot of, you can go and read Pia Melody. She's the queen of codependence. So go and read it. She's not, and then they blame the one like you. They blame the other person, right? So, but it's a whole dynamic.
What's her name? P Melody?
Pia, Pia, and then the last word is Melody. She was famous for writing on codependency. Any of her books are great. So it's a, obviously non-Jewish book. So because you were attracted to this guy from your wounds, it's unlikely that this guy is good for you, Gaval. Because you attracted it from the wounds and you were recreating some of the childhood stuff. It's good that you're working on it, but it's unlikely that this guy and the dynamic you had, and especially like the water under the bridge, the past you've had together, paves the way for a healthy, good, stable, normal relationship. It's unlikely, because if you really heal, you probably won't want this guy, to be honest. Like, you won't want that relationship. And if you don't really fully heal, then you'll want it, but it'll be the same. It comes out of the wound. It was attracting you from the woundedness inside of you, right? So we don't want that. We want you to be out. It's amazing that you had the guts to take the break and work on it, right? And really work on it and strengthen. As soon as you pedestal someone, for everyone on the call, as soon as you pedestal someone, you know that you're in your wound. Because as soon as you pedestal someone, you're in your lack of self-worth. Right? So that's not the place you want to come from in a relationship, and it's definitely not attractive, and it's definitely not the place you want to date from. So that's what I teach you in my course, is like, how do I find where that wound is, how it's expressing in my body, and let me now get into a bigger, higher sense of self, right? We call it soul mode, a higher sense of self. And how do I then talk to that part of me that feels really unworthy? And how do I love that part of myself into the rest of me so it's not acting on its own? Because right now those wounds are feeling unworthy, and they're hooking onto him. Make me worthy, right? Make me worthy, that guy. But you need to do it to yourself. When you can do it for yourself, firstly, you won't need him in that way, which is coming from a very young place. And you'll be able to actually have true intimacy. The codependency in an adult is, especially with a narcissist, because that's what happens with a narcissist, is also an undeveloped part of ourselves where we didn't get what we needed, right? If codependency is like an attempt of merging with another person, like a child merges with its mother. When a child is young and merges with the mother, which is healthy as a child, when a baby's born, they don't even know they're separate from the mom. They think they're part of the mom. And at some point, the baby, as it gets older, realizes it's separate. And that's when they get clingy, right? A number of months. A newborn can be passed around to anyone. They could care less because they think they're part of the mom. At some point, the baby gets aware enough to know, oh my gosh, I'm separate from mom and I'm so vulnerable. I'm going to be clingy to mom because this is scary. So they get very, very clingy to mom. And then as the mother can genuinely feed and be there for the child on all levels, the child starts to develop more of a sense of self and feel more confident, to the point where they can practice crawling, practice walking. They feel confident, but they have to be kind of near mom. Mom has to be in the room, right? And then as they get more confident, if the mother's healthy, she allows for that separation to happen more and more. The terrible twos, the child says no, 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 and has a sense of autonomy at 2 years old. And then as the child gets older, the mother's job is to just give more and more space, right? For the child to learn more and more independence at a natural pace until the child can stand on its own feet and be its own person. And as it gets into teenagehood, they're trying to find out who they are as adults. But if you didn't have that, and you had a mother who was neurotic or anxious or didn't have her own healthy individuation from her mother, then there's a certain enmeshment, a certain codependency that stays stuck. The child didn't get to individuate, separate away, and be on their own.
Yep.
And that's, then you get stuck and you go looking for a love interest the same way, because it's a projection.
Like severe anxiety. My mom always had severe anxiety,
There you
and
go.
there, still now, and now I'm like that, and I can't stand that I'm like that, because it's like very hard to live with that. You know, any decision, I think about it 1,000 times before I do something. It's really
right. So you have to learn to trust yourself and learn to build up that self-worth.
So can you help me with like the victim mentality, and then also like
Sure.
the abandonment, so the abandonment wound, and
Yes.
also what was the other? It was abandonment, and then the other one was like, yeah, always focusing on my mom as a kid, because she had a lot of anxiety, she had a lot of health issues, there was a lot of things going on.
Gaval.
I didn't have a childhood. So is that something that I could fix now? Because like now,
Yes.
you know,
You
I'm an adult, but I
Yes.
feel like a kid still.
You definitely can. You feel like a kid because there's parts of you that are like a kid and there's parts of you that are not like a kid. But the parts that are like a kid are taking over.
I feel like I didn't get to be a kid, so now I feel like I want to, but I'm older.
Book a call with me, will you?
Okay.
There's a link in the chat, and we'll talk out what you need. But
Okay,
yes, the answer is yes, meaning to everyone here, whatever your past was, no matter what it was, you do not have to go into your future with that, and you don't have to be defined by that. And I have seen it many, many, many times. I've experienced it myself, where I just no longer have the patterns. Like I'm in my 40s now, and I no longer have the patterns I had in my 20s because I did that work. So I've seen it in myself, and I went through a period where I didn't think it was possible to get rid of certain patterns, and you can. You definitely can. And Hashem is the ultimate healer, and he allows us to heal. You know, our body, mind will heal ourselves. Often we have to get out of our own way. We prevent the healing, to be honest. Most of the work with most of my clients is because they're in their own way. How are they in their own way? They're judging, they're suppressing, don't want to feel, don't want to know. I push it down, and they're escaping, right? Into work or into shopping or into whatever, Netflix or into eating. Doesn't matter. There's lots of escapes. So we want to stop that. We want to learn how to sit with ourselves, observe ourselves, allow for whatever's happening from a higher place, and then the body will naturally start to shift and heal, right? So we want to be able to do that.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. My pleasure. But it is hopeful. It's very exciting to know that you don't have to continue, but don't have to bring any past stuff into the future. It's very exciting. Okay. Any other questions before we finish? Happy to really help you. I really want to help people be able to date from their highest self and really be able to have a positive mindset, really trust themselves and feel worthy of a great guy. You have to ask yourself one question. Do you feel like you're the kind of woman that the man of your dreams would want to marry? Deep down, do you really feel like you are the kind of woman that the man of your dreams, like the ideal man that you only could dream of, would want to marry? And like, what do you need to develop to be there? Right. And very interesting. Good. Okay, great. So that's one of the questions. And yeah, we have to be able to tap into that subconscious level. So there's different modalities that do that, right? There's kinesiology, there's hypnosis, there's somatic experiencing, there's different modalities, EMDR, there's lots of different modalities that will tap into the subconscious. And it's good to get a therapist who can work with that. And if you need a therapist to work with that, or I teach you that same method in my course, I'm happy to help. I want all of you to get married. I want to hear all good news as soon as possible. And obviously we're not in control. God's in control. So part of the process is learning trust and surrender, which is a different topic for another night. But that is part of the process. And that everyone here is single because they're developing themselves out of marriage so they can have a much, much better marriage, right? That's for sure. And I know it's hard and that doesn't help at all in the moment sometimes, because I was single for many, many years into my 40s. So I really understand the journey, and don't worry, that won't happen to you necessarily. But it builds you. It's building you. You don't even realize it's building you, but it is building you, and you're going to have a much, much better marriage because of that, this growth that you're doing. So we should continue healing and growing. And you should just know, just to tie in Israel a little bit, and it should be a merit for all of the soldiers' protection, and all Jews everywhere should be protected. And this, whatever war needs to continue for Mashiach to come, it should continue. And that all Jews should be completely unharmed, every Jew everywhere. And that's what I was told that we should daven for by Rav Kamenetsky. The Chasam Sofer actually says that we should not daven for the war to end early, because the war needs to happen for Mashiach to come, interestingly. And so, but we should daven that all Jews are protected everywhere. But why am I tying this in? Because as you heal yourself internally, what you're doing is retrieving parts of yourself from gullus, from internal gullus, exile, and the parts that we've excommunicated internally, and you're turning towards those parts, and you're grabbing them and hugging them and bringing them in as a unified whole inside of you, creating wholeness, creating shleimus, right? Which is that achdus, that unity that we're seeing on the outside with Jews, we're now doing on the inside. And I really strongly believe that part of fighting the war on the physical front is fighting the spiritual war. Like, we know that from a Torah perspective. And that the part of the spiritual war is not just doing mitzvahs and helping each other, but it's doing this work inside, that we become more whole and more solid inside of ourselves, right? Which means we can be better givers to other people as well, and to Hashem. So this work is crucial. So you can do this work with the intention that you're creating more shleimus, more wholeness in the world, more unity, as well as obviously carrying the pain of all of our brothers and sisters in Israel, and doing all the mitzvahs we're doing for Israel and for everyone else. So amen, amen, amen. And I'm looking forward to hopefully speaking to some of you on some calls, and please feel free to book in, and I'd love to help you get married now, quickly, please God. Have a great night, guys. Good night.